Anjiva Cordia. Hello, everybody. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 193, brought to you by the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And as is customary, I start with a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon a Fudna Crinne. Gamara Shiakon in our Jaili agus in our Jirha. Ganairi Lin Lena Quid Garmaka. Gamich Buikas Jeev. Jeha Chivdaka is Spirit Chivdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget the tormented brothers and sisters, and that we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. The wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into ploughshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So let me see where people are from. South Wales, Hertfordshire, Italy, lovely. Eindhoven, the Netherlands, wonderful. From the sunny, freezing Pacific Northwest coast. Well, it's damp, not freezing here, but it's kind of damp and wet. From the frosted arse of Calgary, bless you. Edinburgh, lovely. A very wet Wales. Anyway, it's all lovely to see you. Kevin and Leslie in Sligo, on how it is there. Brilliant. Rainy again, Slough. Boston, wonderful to see you. Danish border, North Germany near the Danish border. Wyoming, beautiful, beautiful. Sussex, okay, assume is Oklahoma. Sierra Nevada, mountains in California. Ulster, soggy Northamptonshire. Well, we are going to, I don't know what it's like in Cavan today, but I'd like to introduce you to my guest this evening, Daniel Downey. Daniel, you're in Cavan, so you're so welcome to this fiery chat. So what is it like in Cavan?
It's beautifully soggy, so it is. It's gorgeously misty, foggy, and mysterious. And it's one of those evenings that chills you to the bone without being freezing, but gorgeous out there.
Yeah. Oh, I love your positive attitude. So tell me, or tell our viewers, Chris, we were chatting not too long ago in Cavan. So tell our viewers what Cavan is like. I know it has got 365 lakes and 365 drumlins and maybe 365 people. I have no idea, but just
yeah. So look, Cavan is the ultimate liminal space, I suppose. We're on the boundary. We're southern Ulster. Which is where and what we're part of makes us very much other to the other areas of Ireland. Cavan's a place of drumlins, so ups and downs, the hollowed hills and the hilly hills, and it's beautiful. It's really, when I was young, I didn't like it. I wanted to escape the whole time, and when I lived abroad for many years, I really gained a deep appreciation of just a kind of humdrum, beautiful drumlin landscape. And that's Cavan in essence.
I mean, we were described doing geography in school, Cavan, you know, the drumlins, they're like eggs in a basket, you know. And then it's interesting with drumlins, because, I mean, they're like these sandy hills left by the Ice Age as the ice melted and retreated. And we have, so I come from the Midlands, we had the Escaria, which is that roadway that actually was a roadway from Tara to the west, I suppose to Rathcroghan, really, right through the centre of Ireland. And a quite magical notion, these ancient roadways. And then the drumlins are these, I suppose, little hills. And yet, with all your lakes, it seems to be, I've never really appreciated Cavan until I started driving through it. In these villages, you know, the back roads, and then you're finding lakes everywhere. Pat says, Cavan reminds me of Strangford Lough with the drumlin landscape. And then you have the same tale of the 265 islands. Well, it's 365 in Cavan, because Cavan always better than everybody else and have way more than anybody else. But do you have any sense of the liminality around the lakes in Cavan?
I think yes, in the sense that not just the lakes, it's also, and I think we've discussed this just recently about the bogs. So for every height, you have a depth. So Cavan has been famous for when it rains enough, just like our commenter has said there, it is 365 islands because the waters rise. I myself live on the side of a drumlin, but when it rains enough, this actually becomes an island. We have to use a boat to get in and out or wade in welly boots. And it's, some of the neighbors complain, but I think it's wonderful. You can see the land breathe up and down. We live on the Erin River, so it does regularly flood, which is inconveniently beautiful, really beautiful. But you do get a sense of the liminal space, both from the point of view of the other beneath and within nature, very close to you. And you still have that sense of untamed nature, that there's parts of this county that still haven't tamed, and it's itself, it's its own space.
Yeah, your connection, you keep breaking a bit. So can you just repeat that again?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I suppose it's from a liminal point of view, it's very much a space of bogs, of lakes. It's a space which I suppose it gifts you a sense of its own space. The cow and the plough don't really have dominion over Cavan. It's a landscape in and of itself. The bogs are untamed. There's areas around lakes that are complete wildernesses. And I love that. I really love that you still have that sense of otherness in nature, that it belongs to itself and not to humankind, which is beautiful.
That's beautiful. So were Bod Namona at all in Cavan?
No, not whatsoever. The bogs are too small. We have too many. If you want industrial bogs, it's not the right place to come to. We have too many small bogs in between the hollows of the hills. So the hills actually work to our advantage. That eggs in a basket topography works in our advantage very much so. Yeah.
You're so lucky because for our non-Irish viewers, Bod Namona was our turf board, and turf was our main source of fuel for so long, and still is in rural areas for some people who have turbary rights to be able to harvest their own turf. But where I come from, in the middle of the bog, in the Midlands of Ireland, we made electricity out of peat. We had briquettes and turf. And that was a really, really important source of fuel and electricity. And it's interesting how, and then of course our bogs are now, they're no longer being harvested. They're beginning to be restored, and bogs, and now instead of being seen as places to be exploited and harvested, they're now seen as very, very special ecosystems, places of biodiversity. And it's interesting to see how the trees are beginning to come back in the bogs. And of course, bogs, like I said, they're repository, they're like banks. So many things have been preserved: butter, bodies, gold. They found various hoards over the years while they were harvesting the turf. Even they found butter that was still perfectly preserved, that was thousands of years old. Really, and again, that notion that it's liminal because it's a dangerous place. You don't walk careful when you're walking in the bogs. You don't go there at night. You have the will-o'-the-wisps, these lights that, are they the souls trying to find their way through the other world? Are they spirits? What are they? But anyway, so there's lots of magic attached to the bog. And I'm really intrigued that ye in Cavan managed to avoid that and could keep it in between the drumlins. It's really interesting how a topography that you might think, like, there's no cow and there's no plough. Oh, isn't that a terrible thing? Because often that's seen as something that's really unfortunate. And yet it actually saves your landscape. That's brilliant.
But it is beautiful. It's as well, like you can't walk in any direction for an hour without coming across a small little bog or a small swamp. And these spaces are truly beautiful. They're like the jungles of the north temperate parts of our world. They really have such incredible biodiversity, but also a sense of peace and energy, that you're surrounded or wrapped in the mists and the fogs of those marshes, those fens and bogs. And I often found a solace in that. It's a place that's both lonely of people, but it keeps you company with nature very much so. Yeah.
Brilliant. She's lovely. There's a question from Nimi. Do you think the bog butter was an offering or placed there for storage? And I think it's probably both. What do you think?
I would say possibly a little bit of both. I would say if it was put there for storage, butter was so valuable back in those days, it would probably be taken up. So a lot of the ones that we find today, I would say, because of the nature of how it was wrapped. So we have a huge nugget of bog butter that was found in County Cavan on the borders with and it's beautiful. It's in Cavan Museum. It was sent to the National Museum. And it is, when you touch it, a colleague of mine, she works in the museum, she touched it, it still feels like butter, it still smells like butter. And it was carefully placed in the bog, very carefully, not thrown in as storage. You can get a sense that it was something that was done very deliberately. Yeah.
I would imagine it didn't. I kind of thought it would have been very careless to have lost it, and you would have only ever put it at the edge of a bog if it was for storage near some kind of habitation. And I don't know where they found these bog butters and all sorts of offerings, not beside inhabited areas. I mean, they found, chariots, all sorts of stuff they have found there, weapons, etc. Just like you see in parts of Wales or even in Britain, where swords and all sorts of implements and jewels were put into rivers as offerings, and certainly it happened in the bog as well.
Yeah, it's certainly a place, and again, that comes back to what we were talking about there about even today, identifying the bog or the marsh or the fen as a place where nature is strongest. I'm sure that would have had a draw to the people of olden times, that we may not have a forest to go to because of the landscape to make offerings or to be closer to nature, but there is a place that is, let's say, it's other than human and therefore has an identity or a spirit of its own. Let's make offerings to that spirit, to the manifestation of nature there in that space. And I think especially in an area where, like, for example, when Cromwell came to Ireland, Cavan was one of the last areas that held out against him. It was nothing to do with the people. I'm going to admit that. It was entirely down to the landscape because it was so inhospitable for crossing. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. Absolutely. How your landscape supports you and protects you and keeps you, I suppose, yeah. And I suppose it struck me with the it's interesting. Sounds like such a magical landscape and one a person could spiritually flourish in. The land claims their own. It's really interesting because I come from the bog, and I thought it was it was flat, brown, dull, dreary. People speak with a flat accent. Everything is just dumbed down. And growing up, I thought I could never get away from it. And it's only now, as an adult, that I can go back to the bog where I come from. Loch Bura it's now a parkland. It's a place now of restoration and renewal. The turf is no longer harvested, and it's lovely now. You see the trees and everything is coming back. Nature is coming back again. It's a place of recreation. There are art installations there. I did a performance there in 2024 along with other people called A Day on the Bog, and it's now regarded. And what's fascinating is the biodiversity. It reminds me of Obod. The more biodiversity you have, the more diversity you have, the richer, the richer the environment is. And when I discovered that Drosera, which I used to take that homeopathically, what was I taking Drosera for? Can't remember. I think it was the babies when they had colic. I think. Maybe. Anyway, but that's that sundew. That's that carnivorous plant. So when I first came across carnivorous plants, I thought they were tropical. I didn't think for a minute that they grew in the bog where I come from. And I just, I find that just so fascinating. Rob John says, would the bogs have specific spirits unique to each one, or would it be an overarching spirit? Do you want to answer that?
I do feel that when you go to a particular bog, it has its own identity, its own feeling. I know, for example, there was a bog, Tururcan, where I grew up, and it's certainly had a feeling of its own identity, its own spirit. Here on the banks of the Erne River, it feels different. there is another bog just across the river from me, about 200 yards away. You take a boat across, and as soon as you go across, there's a feeling of, not in a hostile way, a feeling of forbidding, a feeling of this is not a place for us. This is a place of its own. That was completely different to the feeling of the bog I grew up near. And they're only 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers from each other. So I do think that the gentleman there, he's onto something there, that perhaps even if it is a singular spirit that manifests as bogs, it manifests in individual ways according to its location. Yeah.
But again, you see, each place has its own spirit. So the genius loci, every place has its own sense, energy, and spirit. And Pat says, it's the mingling of the elements in the bog and the sense of having to be careful because this nature is not totally tame. That makes it grand. And I suppose it does, because it's funny, people talk about safety all the time now. We're craving for everything has to be safe. But everything totally safe, we get bored with it after a while. We do seek adventure. We do seek risk, because that pushes us to a place beyond ourselves, whatever that is. And bogs have that because it's that mystery, I think.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the great attractors, Eimear, to me, to bogs and marshes, even as a young child, was that it brings you to a sense of excitement, a sense that any step could be death. And it actually brings you closer to your death, which so every bog, and the listener there was spot on when she said about, it's just not tamed. And I love that there's places still in existence, even where we've been agriculturalizing this land for thousands of years, that are still wild and not tamed. It's beautiful.
There's a question from Ricky. You're getting very serious. Do you ever take bogwood for carving, and would that carry that individual sense?
I'm not sure. What do you think, Eimear?
Well, I have bogwood.
I haven't.
I have, my harp has a bit of bogwood on it. Bogwood is really, really hard to work with. It's a really, really hard wood. I've been given pieces, but I don't have the dexterity to, if you get a bit of rowan or a bit of hazel and you have your knife, it's easy to take the bark off and blah, blah, blah. This stuff is really hard, but very, very powerful. And there are people who go to the bogs and find the wood. And then it's interesting how good sculptures can find a shape and stuff comes out of it. It's beautiful. And then, of course, you have different bogs. I have I don't know where it is though. It's bog pine. And I went, when I got it, I went absolutely mad. I was so excited. I was like a child. There's bog oak, bog yew, and pine. And I suppose, I don't know what other bogwoods there are. Pat says, I have a bog oak wand. You'd need a diamond drill to scratch it. Yeah, incredibly robust. And it's, how long has it been in that place? It comes out just black and yuck, and then you clean it off and then you polish it and you start carving it. It's Sean says, perhaps it's like light through stained glass, an underlying essence differentiated and framed by the context. I assume you're talking about, Sean, about the spirit of place rather than bogwood, but it's just fascinating.
It is. Just to come back to the bogwood, Eimear, there's a fantastic wood carver here in Cavan, Robbie Burns, and he's talked about this in the sense that with normal wood, you can bend the wood to what you want to vision it to be, but with the bogwood, it's the total opposite. It has to form itself through you, and he always has this sense that the bog oak itself is something that is stubborn almost. It's grown into its own grain, that it will resist anything except what it wants to become. And that's beautiful, that idea.
I think, when you think of, I'm just thinking of the destruction of forests, by loggers and all sorts of other vested interests in exploiting the land. And then you have these bogwoods. No, we're not growing, but by God, we'll still, or goddess, we will still prevail, and we will not bend to your will. And I just think, that is just so lovely. In the Revenge of the Bog Woods is that you can't do it. I will express myself as I will, and I will let you help me do that, but you're not going to control me. Oh, Ricky says, I've got a wee
Exactly.
bog oak owl and very much believe the owl revealed itself rather than the carver persuaded the wood to be an owl. Absolutely. And I suppose, in a sense, isn't that the true essence of what a sculptor is?
Yeah.
Michelangelo talked about this, that, have a big block of marble and you say, what are you going to carve? I don't know. I have to see what is revealed. And I'm not a sculptor, so I've never experienced that. And I just think, wow, how, and this is, with imas or awan flowing through you, you have no vested interest in an outcome. You want to create something, but you are going to just wait and see what comes through you, and whatever it is, the marble or the stone or the wood that you're using. And I
Is
find
that
that
not also, whether you're creative or you think you're not creative, because everybody has that creative spark within them, but is that not also a sense of how you live your life? That the life is unveiled to you. There's Anthony de Mello has a fantastic analogy where he talks about that we're a stubborn block of stone at the beginning, and every hurt, every pain is into the beautiful figure we are. And I love that.
Can
I
you
love that
can you
idea.
repeat that, Daniel?
We
You just
reveal
broke up.
ourselves. Yeah.
Can you repeat that again?
So it's just
you
the
broke up.
idea that we're so just the idea that we're like normal blocks of stone, and with every pain, every hurt, or every stumble along the way, we chip a little piece off and become the beautiful craft that we are, the beautiful sculpture that we are. And I think that's a gorgeous sentiment. So yeah.
Well, I've just been thinking about this. I was in an interview the other day, and I was talking about this notion of people ask me about my story, and was this my? People say, was that your dream to be? And I go, no, I've never had the only long term. I had two long term goals when I was 4. One was to go to Africa and save the world. I did go to Africa, failed miserably saving the world, and the other was to be a doctor. And thank God I was too lazy at school to actually get points. Otherwise. And then I realized, as later on, as a young adult, no, medicine wasn't for me. But I didn't know I was going to be a druid. I didn't think I was going to be a storyteller. I never thought I was going to be the head of an order. That just didn't even, that was never my plan. Yeah. So I only went, so a bit like, and we're encouraged in the modern world, what are your short-term goals, your midterm goals, your long-term goals? You need to see where you're going to go, etc. And I know people who would know from the time they were school, they could see that straight road ahead. Until they were retired. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able to, mine has been the twistiest, bendiest, spirally road of my life, which makes it very, very interesting. But I hadn't come across that Anthony de Mello's piece about like we are a piece of rock and let's see what is revealed to us and how we can become. And I find that just so fascinating and exciting because there's no disappointment then. Once you leave yourself open to the experience that come your way, the chance meetings, the opportunity, being still,
and
moving at the right time.
The more you leave yourself, and the more you let yourself be open to those experiences, the more the world will give you the positive experiences it needs to give a part of itself, that is you, to enhance itself and to make sure that you're looked after. I firmly believe that it's a beautiful sense of creation, and you're not living a life, you're creating a life. You're not surviving a life, you're actually creating something beautiful. And sometimes it may not be entirely pleasant, and sometimes it may be completely gorgeous, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be beautiful, whether it's dark or bright or happy or unhappy.
Yeah, and I mean, pain, sorrow, all of that is part of our living. It's not about the ultimate pursuit of happiness, which I think gets us down the wrong road. It's also around not trying to control things and going. I mean, it's about having agency. Yeah. But when you really have agency, then you're able to surrender. When you don't have agency, then you're resisting and trying to control. And that's a hard place to be. Now, speaking that, I don't have anything, I don't have any bomb in my head or anything at the moment. I'm living in a place that's at the moment peaceful, long may it last. But I suppose anyone watching this is around being so grateful to have the life we have. Rob John says, my wife passing away last year made me realise the futility of having future goals. I'm looking forward to treading the ovate journey, but I cannot hope for things in the future. Um, I get that. My husband John, Rob John, died 11 years ago almost now, and what we learned when he got his diagnosis was live as fully as you can for as long as you can. And it's like, I'm going to live today or the next few days. Hopefully, I have a few more days, and do that for as long as we can. And I have found that really, really helpful. And I remember my son was born, and I was with my midwife, and I was just saying about the anxiety as a first-time parent, about cot deaths. Although our son was in the bed with me, but with us, but that worrying, is the child breathing and all of that. And she said, all you can do, Eimear, is love him for as long as you have him. And once she said that to me, all anxiety left me. I thought, okay, I'm going to love him for as long as I have him, because I can't control it. I can do the best I can to take care of him. But, and I found that really, really freeing. So I'm hoping you're managing your grief. And, grief, Rob John, is the price you pay for the love you had. And I hope you can say it was worth it, because I've been able to say that. And that's another thing that really supported me, that to go on, to be able to continue to live. Yeah. And Amy says, so sorry, Rob John, that's lovely. The future is an unseen path that opens as we walk. And I suppose it's about opening yourself to whatever opportunities, and the ovate journey certainly offers that, going deeper and darker into the forest. Who knows what comes up and what healing is there by continuing on the path. Howlin' Willie says, going well so far in 26, that's good. Keeping busy and living with purpose in this mad, magic-filled world. Okay, then he's asking somebody else a question. How are somebody and Leslie faring? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so...
grief, look, grief can be also beautiful in a way. I know that I lost my brother in September, just gone by. He decided to end his own journey early, and it was, it has been challenging. But again, come back to grief. Every tear you shed is a representation of the love that you had for them. So, Rob John, if you're still feeling the grief, then it just means it's real, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm sure, Eimear, you miss your husband every day, and that means the love you had. It wasn't that it was real; it still is. That's beautiful. It will echo with you forever. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So tell us about your background then. Why are we here?
Okay. So in a nutshell, so I was born in Cavan. I'm the product of violence, actually, unusually so. My father was involved in Northern Ireland in the Troubles, and he decided he wanted to renege on that. He wanted a life of peace, and he had a kind of an eye-opening experience when he gave birth to his first child, which is myself. And he put all that aside and left it behind, the war in the north and violence. And he raised us in peace, raised us not to look at things from any particular side. And we lived very beautifully in a very lovely house near a bog, as I mentioned earlier, in Cavan, the rolling hills. But very much so, we were given a sense to appreciate peace and appreciate sanctuary, and growing up in that, I learned to appreciate nature. So as a very young child, walking through the hills and the drumlins, the forests, the bogs, the marshes, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of coming home every time, and it was gorgeous. So, and that kind of fast forwarded. I had very difficult teenage years. Unfortunately, my mother was an alcoholic. My father became a workaholic as a result, and I thankfully failed to take my own life at the age of 18. So that was something that was a pivotal moment in my life. One of the hardest days of my life, probably the hardest day of my life, but I would never change it. Not for, when we talk about the chips of stone that are taken off that block, that's one of those that shaped me into a better person for having lived that and experienced that. And it's something that has enhanced my ability to appreciate life. And I went away from that over the years. And believe it or not, I wasn't sure what I was going to be studying in college after that. And for a person who was lacking meaning and lacking drive and lacking a purpose, it's ironic that I ended up studying philosophy for 4 years. The meaning of life. So I ended up swimming through philosophy and studying Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism, and it was beautiful. And then eventually in my late 20s, I moved abroad. Like yourself, I had this passion for living somewhere else and changing the world in some way. So I did. I moved to Nepal. I lived there for just over a year. I worked in an orphanage, and then I moved to Australia for a year. Love brought me there, which didn't work, which was good too. That's okay. And then I ended up in Myanmar for almost 2 years,
Where
working and
was that?
living there for a
Again, I
humanitarian
missed.
project. Myanmar,
Where
so in Burma.
Myanmar, okay.
Burma.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was very interesting. So almost 2 years there. But by the time I hit my 30s, I decided, you know what, I miss home. I miss the Drumlin landscape. I miss the rolling hills. So, but I still wanted to do something to help. So I came back, I started volunteering, and I became a community development worker. Uh, and then after 7 years of being a community development worker, I wanted to do something more for the people I lived around, and I became a politician. So for some years, I had 3 years as an actual elected politician, and it was 3 years where, now fair play for people who are brave enough to do this, people who want to stand up for what they believe in and believe that politics is a pathway to do that. I Hats off to them, absolutely. But it just wasn't me. I felt like something was shriveling, dwindling away within myself. And I remember the day, Eimear, when I stopped becoming a politician. And I felt like a release. I started writing poetry. I started painting again. I started going out into nature again. And I felt like I had gone for walks before, but it was through scenery. It wasn't through nature. I would walk past trees, but not walk in a forest. There was a difference that made so much of a difference. And I felt like I had come back home to the same young person I was when I was young. When I ran through the fields and through the bogs and meadows. So that's what actually led me to OBOD, was failing to be a politician led me to reigniting my passion and beauty for nature. And it was that I realized that all I really need, I don't need a cathedral, I don't need a podium, I don't need a spokesperson. All I really need is a river and a forest. And that's it. So what led me to OBOD was I wanted to walk the path. I did a little bit of research, and specifically OBOD, as opposed to just generally Druidry, was I found something that was refreshingly open. It was something that wasn't prescriptive. It wasn't like violently, we are Druids. It was very much something that was an open, gentle path, inviting you to walk. And that invitation, that gentle invitation, was all that I needed. And it was the right time, the right place. And I began to walk the Bardic path. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the word invitation, and I think that's so OBOD, is that, as you travel through the course and the various grades, we invite you to, and if this feels right, then you might like to try this. And if it doesn't feel right, then maybe just leave it for another time. And then maybe if you like, if it feels good again, to revisit this. So everything is by invitation. You enter and you join the order. You come of your own free will, and you can leave of your own free will with our blessing. Um, and I'm just talking with John. Rob John says a big thank you to Lena at the OBOD office. She's been very supportive. Without the support of certain members of the Grove here and the actual Grove itself, I don't think I'd have got this far. I'm so grateful to OBOD, and thank you for that feedback, Rob John. I don't know you, and I didn't know about your wife, but I think it's just so lovely that we have an order that supports and holds people, and that with the seed groups we have all over the world, and the groves, that for those who are not solitary practitioners, I think it's really hard sometimes if you're a solitary practitioner. But for those who have that community, and now we have our virtual groves and with the hearth to provide that container of support for people. I think it's just beautiful. And it's again by invitation. That's what's so really nice about it.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love as well is, and this is something that was very important to me, that you're not just consuming the material; it gives you time to digest it as well. And I think that's something like, so for example, when I finished the Bardic grade, it was back in May last year, and I was at first eager to, well, continue on, keep going, keep going. I said, no, actually, let's hold on, continue your ceremonies, continue your practice. There's a small stone beside the river, 200 yards from here. That's where I go. I do my practice, and I continued that. And it's where you habitually create yourself as a person that's making it a part of yourself. You're digesting it, assimilating as part of who you are. And it has become a beautiful part of my life, and it has sustained and supported me through difficult times, particularly when I lost my brother. So yeah, it is an invitation, and I'm happy to say I'm accepting the invitation to the Ovate grade now in this season
Are
as
you?
well. So beautiful.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So, how would you say? Maybe maybe I don't know if you've already answered it, but how has what impact has joining the order had on your life or your druidic practice? What impact has it on your life?
I think it's what it's particularly done is it's given me a structure or a voice to something that was so important to me that I always knew was there. Every time you
Mm.
walk by a river, every time I walked in a forest, I knew the feeling. I held the feeling. It gave me such solace and support, and it was something so beautiful. But I lacked the voice or the articulation or the vocabulary to say the beauty that was real in the magic of nature, of the landscape. And Obod helped me do that. The practice helped me do that. The mystery was still there, but the mystery found form through the words, the Guerci. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I think that's one of the main things that it has done is it's given form to the mystery without destroying the mystery, because sometimes I think we can try and articulate mystery, and that sometimes destroys its otherness. Yeah.
Yeah, and mystery by its very essence should not be known. It can't.
Yeah.
It must not be articulated,
Absolutely.
but it needs to be sensed. And there's that kind of it's paradoxical about I I get it, but I can't articulate it. It's like a mist. I can't grab it. It's not tangible, but it's there. And I think that is just so beautiful the way you put that. For me, it was like I described it. It gave me a scaffold or a framework from which to build my practice. And because there's no dogma, I was free to create the druid within me in my
Yeah.
own way through the support of the teachings, the course, and all of that, and the membership and being part of it. And that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Um, I was asked about, how do we manage with gurus the other day? And it's like, well, I know about there can't be a guru because there's no dogma.
Yeah.
And people, every so it's not a qualification. You join the order. You start on the bardic grade. You go through the course, etc. But you do it at your own pace. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. What you're asked to do is reflect on your experience. You don't get an exam at the end where you have to get all the right answers. I don't know what a good druid is. I don't know what a bad druid is. And so there is no guru because there's no somebody telling you what to do with your life. And the freedom that has uh, to be who you are and
My
be the
my,
druid that
my
you
mentor. Oh, absolutely. But my mentor was beautifully supportive in that. I would sign off my emails to her saying, "Your apprentice, Daniel," and she would correct me and say, "No, no, no. Like there's no apprentices here. There's no." And I felt such a beautiful sense of equity and camaraderie with her, though she was further along the path. And one of the things I would say, particularly people who are approaching OBOD for the first time, is, and this is what my mentor gave me, very much so, don't feel like you have to get it right every time. Don't feel like you have to get it right at all. Feel yourself through it. Like when it comes to a ceremony, feel yourself through the ceremony. We all stumble, we all fall, we all meander through these things, but I got a real sense that it is, as you said, it's not a building, it's a scaffold to help you build what your Druidry is. And I love that. That's very beautiful. But it also means we can enrich OBOD as well as a result of that. Yeah.
People add to it all the time. And again, it's not about getting it right. I make mistakes. I make mistakes during ceremonies, during ritual. And I laugh. I do, of course. I think I made her at your wedding, did I? I don't know. But it's like things happen. I slur my words or whatever it is, and I don't get caught up in that because it's not about doing it. It's not doing it the right way because, okay, we often have spontaneous ritual or we have one with a script. And it's the intention that you bring into a ritual that's important because it's the energy that will carry, not being perfectly articulate in your expression of the words. It's the feeling behind the words. And all of that goes around the circle and is held by the community that's there. That's what's important, and it's not performative. And that's what's really important to remember. And like you're referring to yourself as an apprentice. There's no such thing as a baby druid. I hear this. People say, "Oh, baby druids." It's like, no, you're not. There's no babies here. We're all adults because you have to be over 18, and we're at different parts. And it doesn't matter where you are on the path. I'm never interested. I mean, I know you, but I had no idea what grade you're on, and nor did it bother me. I wasn't interested. I'm not interested. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say, but it doesn't matter to me in terms of how I relate to you, how far you are on your path. And it never has been, certainly not on this side of the, in the OBOD that I know. And Arcturus Druid says, Druidry is the embracing of what we aspire to be rather than chasing perfection. And you know what? You're on a hiding to nothing. If you're looking for perfection, forget it. And the thing about perfectionists are never good enough. And I used to have clients, because I'm now retired, I would have a perfectionistic client who was continuously striving. And I said, the problem is with you, you're a perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist. I always get it wrong. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what a perfectionist is, Ricky says, stop confusing me with an adult just because of my age. Sorry, Ricky. I'm trying my best. But anyway, so it's about we are all on our own path and we're where we need to be right now. And there's no rush. And of course, within the order, there's no hierarchy, even though there's 3 people at the top, but it's a fairly flat hierarchy. And that's what's really, really important, even though we've 3 grades. And that's not hierarchical in the sense of that. It's a path you take. You start as a bard because that's the foundational core, the foundational work with the wheel of the year, the elements connecting with the land, and then the Ovid has a different emphasis, and then the Druid grade has a different emphasis. But I'm always intrigued, like our former Pendragon Dave, he's the bard. When he finished and gone through the Druid grade, he goes, you know what? I'm a bard. That's how I identify. And people, I know so many members have, finish all 3 grades and then they go back to the beginning again. And then their second journey through the bardic grade is very different to the first. And I know people have done it a few times. And that's what's so fascinating, is that each time, what's that line from T.S. Eliot? To come back to this place and know it for the first time. It's from his 4 quartets, or one of his 4. And it's just lovely that revisiting something and you're saying, oh, this is new land again. I know I've been here before, but it's like a fresh look again. And Pat says, my first job as a trainer is to knock perfectionism out of people, or they are too busy panicking about mistakes to make progress. Absolutely. Get out of your own way and just be. How we met, well, we've met at different meetings, but you're a storyteller. So,
yes.
And I'm conscious, just a little frustration is that your internet connection isn't so good. And I'd love for people to hear a story from you.
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to just plow into it, or?
Yeah. Viewers, are you ready for a story? He's a good storyteller, by the way.
Okay, so gather round by the fire, everybody, for a story from the drumlin landscape of County Cavan. A long, long time ago, Cavan wasn't built on a hill. No. It was built in a beautiful green valley. Oh, a valley that was of such gorgeous mirth, such width and beauty that it had no match in anywhere in the land. In this valley, the green river passed through it like a snake from the Amazon, so gorgeous, shining and shimmering in the sun. Cavan folk were the happiest folk in the entire country, so filled with contentment and so gorgeous and beautiful, as we all know Cavan people to be. But there then came a summer like no other in Ireland, a summer without sun, a summer where the darkness shone brighter than ever. The summer crumpled and decayed all that there was. It was a challenging summer, but for everything, there is an evenness, there is a balance. The following summer was a summer of sunshine, where the sun blossomed and there was no rain. And the people thought, oh, we are so happy, we're so fantastic. This is the blessing we waited in return for the hardness of the year before. Into this summer, the first month, the people rejoiced. They basked in the sun. They got suntans and sunburns. People like myself, who are very well endowed with a baldy head, well, we were scorched to bits. But the second month, well, the cattle went hungry, before the grass started to become brittle and cracked like autumn leaves under their hooves. The sheep themselves, well, they were thirsty, for the green river was now a green stream. The people themselves began to look worried, began to thirst. And then the third month came. The green river that was a green trickle was nothing at all. Muck and mud. The flies came in huge harvests of buzzing. Well, it was a harsh time, a horrid time, and the people begged for rain. Now, at the end of the village, on one end, there was a hill with a little copse of trees. And in these trees, not one fairy, not two fairies, but 3 fairies lived. And they danced and they sang, and the people were frustrated hearing all the happiness from these fairies. But at the other end, there lived a washerwoman. This washerwoman, she did all the washing for all the people of the village. And where did she do the washing but down in the river? And as the mud rose and as the water fell, all she had was muck to drain out, to try and dredge and do all of the washing of all the village. And it was hard work for anyone. So the first time she did this, she cursed the fairies, and they're smiling and laughing. And now, as those of us who know, to curse one fairy is bad. To curse 2 fairies is horrid. But to curse 3 fairies, that's a calamity. Well, the first night, the fairies, as the washerwoman fell asleep, they came a-clattering on the roof. They came a-smashing on the windows, and they came a-knocking on the door. The fairy woman, she opened the door, but like a fart in the wind, they were up and gone. The second night, the fairies came again, and the washerwoman was exhausted. Well, this time, though, she had a bucket of dirty water ready by the door. The fairies came a-clattering, the fairies came a-smattering, and as they rattled on the door, she opened the door, she threw out the bucket of dirty water. But fairies, they are fast folk, and away they went. So the third night, the washerwoman was ready. The third night, there she was, with the dirty water by the door. And she lay her head down, as if to sleep, and and as she did, she heard the fairies clatter on the roof. She heard them scatter on the windows, and she did not wait. She didn't wait for the knock on the door. She opened the door straight away, and she threw out that bucket of water. Dirty, sweat-filled, silt-filled buckets of water all over. Not the fairies at all. For Anfar Dorcha, the dark druid, who had been travelling from Cavan to another part of the land, was passing with his cart and horses, and there he stood drenched in the folks' sweat and the silt of the river and the dirt of the water. And he looked down on the washerwoman and he said, "Washerwoman, what have you done?" And she cowered, for she knew the power of An Fear Durcha. And she looked up and said, please, no, don't. And she begged, please, don't hurt us. And he stood up on his cart. And as a druid, he knew the ways of the world. He knew the ways to summon the weather, knew the ways to summon things. And he said, well, as you've wetted me, I will wet you. A curse on you and all of the Cavan people. And he raised his staff to the heavens. And suddenly, like bullets, the rain started to fall. An Fear Durcha, drenched still, tore off into the night. Well, the washerwoman, she didn't know what to do. But all the people came out when they heard the tip-tap on their roofs. For 3 months, they hadn't seen any rain. The river, it became, that horrible little sump of a river became a trickle once more. Well, the rain poured and poured. The people came out. They danced in the rain. They took their clothes off, shampooed their heads and their hairs. And they had a glorious time. And they said, oh, the drought is gone. The drought is gone. And they blessed the rain, so they did. But be careful. For everything there is a balance, and for every crossing there is a curse. The rain swelled and swelled. The green trickle became a green river. The green river burst its banks into the people's homes as it flowed. Up through the stairs it gorged and swelled. And the washerwoman and the people of Cavan, they fled up on top of a hill, where today Cavan town now stands. But that is the story of the first Cavan town, now located at the bottom of what we call the Green Lake to this day, which was once the Green River and the Green Vale. But if you're traveling to Cavan from the direction of Dublin, just before you come into the town, there's a little park by a little lake. And across that little lake, there is a little island with a cronnog on the top and a copse of trees. And on that island, which was once a hill, if it's a very early morning and the sun is rising in the summertime and you see the scorch and feel the heat, if you hear the laughter of not one fairy, not two fairies, but 3 fairies from that island of trees, mock them not, for we will have a drenching, a pouring, a tsunami of rainfall, as we once did when the first Cavan town was destroyed. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that's just lovely. Absolutely lovely. Brilliant. What got you into storytelling, Daniel?
Actually, do you know, it was Obot. It was when I signed up to do the Bardic grade, I read about storytelling, and it just so happened that there was an organized event happening very near here in Enniskillen, and it was training in storytelling by Storytellers of Ireland and the Armstrong Trust, and it was called Border Talk, and they were looking for 6 of us from Cavan and 6 of us from Fermanagh, either sides of the border, to bring us together to tell local stories. And that was the first story I came up with. I researched the origins of Cavan town, how it used to lay at the bottom of the lake, and how there is a folklore story here about how a druid was insulted and the lake rose because he called the rains down upon the people. So that was the first story I devised. We had to do a story at the end of our training as a small test in front of an audience. That was the first story I did. And 2 years later and 48 stories later and over 1,200 people later listening to my stories, putting up with them, I'm still a storyteller, and I still love it. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And of course, I heard you in August in Cavan, and did I also hear you? I know in Fermanagh and Enniskillen. Did you do it as well in Enniskillen? And then of course, in Cavan
last week
recently.
Yeah.
I thought you'd been telling for much longer than that.
No, 2 years. Yeah, it's a new vibrancy. Yeah.
Wow. Because I when I was on the Bardic grade, I struggled because I wasn't a bard. I was not. And Howard, my husband, would spit out poetry. He'd be down, beside the cooker in the kitchen, waiting for the dough to rise or the bread to cook, and he'd be writing away. And I'm going, here I am. I was doing ovatic stuff all the time. And it wasn't until I'd handed in my review, I was at a gathering of shamans and I started telling stories. And it's like, it just opened up. And I've never looked back. That was 2009, I remember,
Beautiful.
in Dundee. I just started doing it. And I could always tell a good joke, but I didn't value that because I thought that's too flip. I mean, somebody would tell me a joke and then I would embellish it and make a story
Yeah.
out of it. But that was just for entertainment. It had no value in my head.
But for any
And
listeners or viewers who have not heard you storytell, it is an absolute treat, folks, to the senses. Because Eimear, she doesn't tell a story; she mesmerizes with the story.
go
She
on.
she weaves it and brings you into the story. So it is an absolute treat. You certainly don't just tell a story. So thank you so much.
And of course, we have, our storytelling once a month. We meet on the Hearth. So you must join us. That's on the next one is on the 12th of February online, which is beautiful. Now, Jules has a question for you. I've been enchanted. Indeed, a magnificent storyteller. She's talking about you. Do you have a YouTube channel? If not, you would have a fabulous one. Bravo.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I tell you what, you can actually hear another one of my stories on the Border Talk or Storytellers of Ireland YouTube channel.
Okay, Storytellers of Ireland.
6 months up there. And their YouTube channel has the story I tell is the story of the Black Pig's Dyke, or the Black Pig's Ditch, depending on your definitions. So it's an ancient Irish legend about a vast worm that creates a ditch across Ireland. So it's there, and there's a few of us, quite a few of us.
The black,
it's lovely to
the Black Pig.
Pig's Dyke, and it's it should be on Storytellers of Ireland YouTube channel. So there's quite a few stories up there by a few different storytellers. But it's certainly something worth getting involved in.
My YouTube, they're rejecting YouTube rejected your comment. Usually this means they think it's spam. They're trying to try changing it a bit. Okay. Listen to tell a story on the Storytellers of Ireland YouTube. That's really
it's just there. So it's 9 minutes. It's a 9-minute story. So if you just Google Storytellers of Ireland, Daniel and Pig, you will find it.
Okay.
So to answer that person's question, no, I don't have a YouTube channel. However, I have been thinking of setting one up because my aim was to actually develop a story for every week of the year, and I'm at 48 stories so far. So when I hit my 52, I'll take a break and then I'll start doing storytelling. I'll also get over this flu, so I'll be storytelling a lot better in about a week or two. But I would love to storytell for people. Yeah. Beautiful.
And why not? I have a YouTube channel, and I've some recorded stories. There, some, not many, but it's just a wonderful thing to do it. And so when we were at the thing in Cavan recently, where there were 5 tellers, including you, graduates of the course, of that cross-border course, it was just wonderful. No 2 tellers tell the same in the same way. It's a bit like no 2 druids are the same, but just fascinating that different storytelling styles. You came from the same course.
Yeah.
But you had the same teachers, but you tell stories in a completely different way. And it's really interesting. Often when we're learning something, sometimes there's a temptation to try and be like our teacher.
Yeah.
And for some reason, none of you tried to be like your teacher. You became your own tellers with your own stuff and different kinds of stories. And that's what's so lovely, because the world of storytelling and the world of stories is like, it's a massive, gigantic, big cauldron that there's stories for every kind of teller. I mean, I hear stories and I with a teller, and I think amazing story, really loved it, but I could never tell that story. That could never be my story.
Yeah.
And others go, I want to tell that story. That really calls to me. And it's just that, what is it? Somebody told me, you don't marry everyone you date. You don't tell every story you hear.
Yeah.
The stories you like. And like food, you say, I'd love to cook this. And others say, no, I never want to cook it, but I want to eat more and more of it, but I don't want to ever have to cook it. And others was, I'd love to learn this recipe. And it's the same with storytelling. And there's a huge Thank you, Rob John. You just subscribed to me. That's very kind of you. Um, and it's just that fascination with just playing with stories and making them your own. And like I do, I take it from perspective of a female character or put my own spin, just like you do. You know, you
Yeah.
told that in
But
a
you mentioned
Danielle
as well,
way. Go on.
yeah. But you mentioned as well about people going back to, for example, the Bardic Grade again, and it's totally different. But a story is like that. It's like a living thing. And I've told a story. I've told you the same story twice, and you've heard it two different ways, very different ways. The funeral
Politician.
addict, the story about the
Yes.
banshee and the
Yeah.
politician. Yeah. So again, it's very. It's almost like the philosopher Heraclitus says: you never walk into the same river twice, not because it's a different river, but because you're a different person every time.
That's right. Yeah.
So a story will be different every single time. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. And yeah, so yes, this is somebody else had put this there in a similar vein to the T.S. Eliot quote, no man ever steps in, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man. And then
Thank you,
somebody
Rick.
else had found Ricky. Thank you, Ricky. I've got great people, researchers as viewers. You just put out a question or something comes up and neither of us know the answer, and someone will come up with it. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time.
It's
And
beautiful.
I think the thing about storytelling is that I know I'll tell a story different times, but the audience will be different. So you weave in something else that's topical, or you forget something, or something else comes into you, and it's about that how organic and dynamic storytelling is. That it's not learning off lines,
Yeah.
but it's actually embodying the story and then just seeing what happens. And there's a
Oh,
magic to that.
Eimear,
Just
my one of the funniest moments I ever had was exactly to do with this. I went to a school to do storytelling, and it were very different ages. There were ages from 5 to about 9, 10 years of age. So the young children, I just assumed I never story told to children before, but I just assumed I'll do some children's stories, lovely stuff. And I started telling all these stories. The younger children loved them. And I got to the older children and they looked bored witless. And I actually stopped and I said, "Are you not enjoying these? Are you not?" And they're like, "I thought you were going to be scary." So I busted out the changeling story, which is a terrifying story of a creature, like an absolutely gnarled, horrific creature that comes, steals the baby, and replaces it with itself or with another member of its changeling tribe. And the story has a part in it where the changeling is basically saying, "Mommy, feed me." And you have to do this 3 times because things happen in trees and stories. And it's wonderful because at the end of it, the children, I thought, this is maybe too much. It's a very dark story, dark ending. And as I was leaving, the children all were in the playground outside going, "Mommy, feed me," to each other, repeating this. And they came back to their teachers and said that they loved that they'd been given a story that wasn't Disney. They were given a story that felt real, like that was dark and had horror. And they loved being scared, not being cushioned. And I think that's something that our storytelling is very, very good at doing this. It's summoning just something that's a little bit edgy and gives you the feelings you need to feel or you want to feel. That beautiful edginess you have. To come right back to the start of our conversation, the same feeling you have when you walk into a swamp. It's that slight fear, slight danger, and a story that does that, that gives you that. That's beautiful. Yeah.
well, I was telling stories at sound time, and I was told to go mix people. So I thought, okay, I have my sound stories, which there's Over, there's Thorn, and the Dracula, and a few others. And I thought, will I, won't I, will I, won't I? And I could see loads of kids. But there were parents there. And I always think, well, if there's children there, it's the parents' responsibility to make sure they're safe. Particularly if there's a crazy storyteller telling scary stories. I said, who wants a scary story? Are you sure you want? How's really scary? Tell me I can't hear you. And then I knew I could do it. And I told those that I normally tell for adults. The kids loved them. And an adult came up to me afterwards. She says, "That was great, but you had me terrified." But
Yeah.
that's the thing. And I think it's about not sacralizing, if that's a word, is just to keep it rich and alive.
Yeah.
And of course, research has shown that the children who are overprotected from life, parents lie when a pet dies and they don't let them experience any kind of hardship or any kind of unfairness or whatever. Those children and those who have not been protected from violence and abuse do equally badly. The children who are exposed to the normal life events, grief, sorrow, disappointment, rejection, as well as love and challenge and respect and all of that, they do much better. They are better prepared than those either who have had no protection and those who've been overprotected. So we do need that. Pat says the best episodes of Doctor Who when we were kids were always the ones you watched from behind the sofa. Coming from the Offaly, the bog, there was television. There was no BBC. We just had television. You turned it on at 5 o'clock and it went off at 11. That was it. There was an hour of children's programs. That's all we ever saw. So I don't think I've ever watched a full episode of Doctor Who, but I'm always interested and I hear people who were exposed to real television. Yes. So we're coming to the end of our time. Now, you have a poem, do you?
Yes. So I'm going to have to recite this, as it's been a while since I've actually told it, but I have it here. So this is a poem. I was in Greenland in 2019. Yes, 2019. I had a wonderful experience there. It was just when I finished being a politician. So full of creativity, full of wonderment. I spent my time at the side of a lake. I camped. I carried everything on my back and camped. And I wrote this when I was at the side of a lake for Greenland. But this is the polar bear, and this poem is called The Arctic Queen. So are you ready?
Yes.
Arctic Queen stumbles in her bone-draped skin. Head-sized pads panic through ice melted thin. Brilliant bright fur, sick falls from skin as snow, as human heated air dissolves her island flow. Beautiful polar princess, teeth once sharpened white, destined be bones on rocky coasts bleached bright. Mighty beast, racked weakened before hunger, her pups long starved, now always in her mind forever younger. Mighty snout sniffs plastic, smells the treats, the sweets, but nothing good she eats anyway to grow her fading meat. Fumbling onwards, this brilliant bag of bones, belly ached pains, ripping forth roars and dying groans. Final falls this elegant lady, ending her epic feral life, a creaking starvation cutting her tragic plight. Soon now, just a bone-covering piece of skin and hair. Here lies our Arctic empress, the beautiful, majestic polar bear.
Wow. Oh, now I missed the bit because the sound was a bit distorted. Did you came across a dead polar bear? Yes.
No, so I talked to some hunters about their polar bears, and one of them had this amazing conversation that he used to see polar bears all the time when he was young, and now all he comes across are the carcasses. And they keep coming into the villages, sifting through the plastic, looking for food. And it just brought me home to the fact of not everything is happy in this world. And I thought recently, with Greenland being in the news, I might just summon that poem as well. But again, to come back to what we're talking about, storytelling and the children and the scary stories, it's not that we want something that's always happy. We want to feel something. And sometimes poetry that evokes a feeling is beautiful because it's authentic. It makes you feel, it brings you forward to feel something. So yeah, so I wrote that poem as a homage to the polar bear, not just as the polar bear herself, but as a symbol of the beautiful Arctic and what we're doing. So
well, it's certainly a very apt poem now. Like Greenland being the polar bear, we hope isn't the polar bear, but yeah. Daniel, it's been such a joy chatting to you this evening, and I'll just let you say goodbye to everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. And may you have light blessings and dark sacredness going forward. And I hope all is well in your lives. And thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to be here.
Okay, I'll send you to the green room. Don't go anywhere, and we can look at the
Sure.
comments afterwards. I'll just close off here. So, thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed this fireside chat with Daniel, and it's lovely, and your comments as well as always. And I won't be here next. What day is today? I'll be here in 2 weeks' time. So I'm going to be storytelling next week. So it's just lovely as always to be here and to have your company and to join for these chats. So until we meet again, so Banachti Imulk Chief Galer, may Bridget surround you with her cloak of healing, courage. May she inspire all the poets and artists out there. Help the forgers of steel and those who forge peace with the swords of peace and bring healing to all of us. So until we meet again, have a good day, good evening, good morning, or if you're watching a recording of this, until we meet again. Slán go fóill.